All right. So this is the range muscle template.
Yeah, so
Nutrition template.
the template's designed to be general to specific. So the general sort of program we're following is increasing the protein and healthy fats during the daytime, and that helps to drive your energy. So essentially, protein is going to help with maintaining and increasing muscle mass, as well as dopamine in the brain, which has to do with drive and motivation. So it keeps you present and alert. Um, and uh, and fats have to do with concentration and learning. Our brain is like 70 to 80% fat. And we need to really appreciate that fats don't make you fat, but fats actually help you cognitively, and also with just like overall inflammation markers, and communication of toxins and nutrients going into your cells. So we want to have like a high protein, a high fat breakfast, and that helps to just get your brain rolling, smooth out your energy, stabilize your blood sugar. Because if you have a high carbohydrate breakfast, the first thing you're going to deal with is a spike in blood sugar, and people get a false sense of their energy. And then after a couple of hours, you're dealing with a crash, a blood sugar crash. And that's usually when people start to get hungry, cravings come up, and they usually start craving either stimulants, more coffee, and carbohydrates. You get another muffin or something sweet. And what you're doing is you're setting yourself up for like a false sense of your energy. So we want to move, and it's a different feeling when you're working more off of proteins and fats as an energy source during the daytime versus carbohydrates. So breakfast, high protein, high fats, start everything right, work on stabilized blood sugar. That'll give you a lot of energy to get into a good workout, get your day going. Lunchtime, maintaining high protein and cutting down the fats a little bit and starting to add carbohydrates, but in a not a starchy carb. So you're not having a lot of rice and potatoes and squashes and heavy root vegetables, more in like light veg. So a lot of a lot of green veg and cucumbers, some salads, that kind of thing. And that just helps to get more micronutrients into your body. And dinner time, then we're going to move into, and this is where it starts to differentiate. So we'll get into a couple of the options. Dinner time is definitely protein, the same as before. And that's usually when I start to recommend considering putting more carbs in. So by carbs, we mean like rice. White rice is shown to be a lot more hypoallergenic, so less reactive than brown rice, because the hulls, so the husk on the outside of brown rice, for example, has different chemicals in it that stop the absorption of nutrients, and people will react on small levels towards that. And what we want to use carbohydrates for is just a nice calm, even spike in blood sugar, insulin, and there's a whole bunch of other good things that happen as a result of that. So I personally like white rice a whole lot. I'll use sweet potatoes, and rice pasta, and you can go into using squashes and pumpkin or parsnips, like those kind of starchy carbs, heavier carbs. So the purpose of having carbs in the evening is that carbs are also a precursor to serotonin. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter that helps you feel good, gives you sort of just like a relaxed feeling. And that's what people generally crave in the evening. And that will help with sleep. And if your sleep is off, you're going to have a hard time recovering, detoxifying, and increasing muscle. So I use carbs targeted in the evening to help people wind down so they can get a better sleep. And if they're lean enough, and this is where we start to differentiate, if you're lean enough, so men, if you're around 10% body fat, if you can see your abs in the mirror, relatively not totally shredded, that would be super lean, but at least you can see your abs. And women, generally some abs, more in the upper abs, right? Women typically carry more body fat than men, and that's totally fine. So women is about 15 to 17%. If you're lean enough, that's a good significator that you can metabolize carbs. If you are heavier, more body fat, and you want to really lean out, then I would consider omitting carbs in the evening. just to really help your body reset that blood sugar and start to burn off more body fat. So,
Yeah, I
yeah, go
was
ahead.
going to say one thing I've kind of recommended to people too is to kind of think about it like almost like you would with training, is like try 3 days on, 1 day off sort of thing too. It's like still following, like cut the carbs maybe for 3 days if it is, that we are working on shedding that body fat, and then thinking about like the fourth day or whatever, like looking at some of these carb options and adding them in. Is it like that's probably a strategy too to think about it. You would say, hey,
Yeah, totally. So, because the fat burning effect of low carbs and to really give your body a chance to reset its blood sugar, it takes a while. If somebody's really wanting to lean out realistically and get down to that lower body fat percentage and maintain it, you have to set like a new plumb line for the body and let entire process happen within the body. And that takes like minimum 6 months to honestly about a year to 2 years if somebody's been really abusing food and just having a really shitty diet for a long period of time. To reset the body takes a while. So most people in the program will have been working out for a while, so you're going to have a lot of experience with that in terms of muscle activation and just the amount of energy it takes for the muscles to metabolize food. So I like doing 3 days to like 5 days of either no carb or super low carb. And you'll know when you really need carbs, assuming like with this program, we're working out full on. So the training is going to be in place. And if you're deciding to do zero carb Monday to Friday, if you are in a place where you need carbs, you will be really, really craving carbs and like hungry, like you're not ready to kill, but you feel like like a real telltale sign is when your sleep starts to go off a little bit, you can't quite get enough rest. Maybe your focus is not quite there. Your energy just starts to dip at the end of the week, and it's not just a muscle fatigue, but it's more of a systemic fatigue. That's usually when I'll say, okay, now add some carbs tonight. Keep it simple. Give like a cup to 2 cups of cooked white rice, for example. And you'll know if it was the right choice with how you feel the next morning. If you really deserve those carbs and you were on it, you should have had amazing sleep and wake up the next day, look in the mirror, and you should be a bit leaner or have put on some muscle. So that basically lets you know that you've had the right carbs at the right time. Some people like myself, once I get rolling, especially if I'm doing intermittent fasting, and this is some of the other options. So on the more flexibility days, where the workouts aren't as intense. And even if you want to give it a try on some of the more lifting days, not eating until about 12 to 2 p.m., about a 16-hour fast between the last meal. That also helps to stabilize blood sugar. And often cravings for carbs go down because your blood sugar has been stabilized. Sometimes, if you're used to having a lot of carbs, it'll take longer to adapt to no carb. I've been doing low carb for a while, so I can go a good couple weeks, basically zero carb, and my body adapts in a bit of a different way.
also like you're knowing your training is right is always, that's the missing link for a lot of people too, is like if you're not on the right program that has you focused and dialed in, thinking about food and carbs is a distraction. And one of the reasons you're thinking about that is because you're not dialed into your training too, right? So yeah, like I think that's a good thing to keep in mind here, is like reading this way to train this way. So having that kind of aligned with the program and knowing that, I think, and if anyone struggles with that kind of carb thought, having your programming set straight and knowing that we're doing it so that we have that right energy for the session tomorrow will be a lot easier to kind of overcome those distractions, eh?
Totally. Yeah, it's like the training is almost a feedback, and it helps to anchor in where your body's at. With training, and when you're in the middle of a workout and your energy, if it starts tanking in the middle of the workout and you can't complete reps, like the volume is just too much, that might be a sign that you might be either not getting enough protein earlier on, or you need to also add in some carbs, because that'll help to load more glycogen in your body. But as much as we're training our bodies, we're also training our minds too. And sometimes the feeling of being hungry is actually just a feeling. Physiologically, there's no real reason to be hungry, and you can use that feeling and embrace the hunger as a way to focus. Some of my best workouts have been fasted workouts, and I'm actually not that hungry after the workout.
Yeah, you kind of have to tell yourself to eat.
Totally.
Why I like juggling so much too is when you have those long fasted days, or if you get distracted, you just start juggling for a few minutes and you can get yourself back on
focus. Yeah, it's the days where I'm totally off that I have to, for me to fast on the day where I'm off on a Sunday or something, that's usually harder than on a day where I'm working out and doing stuff.
Yeah, maybe we'll encourage a fast midweek or something. See how the group feels about it.
Yeah, it's good to go through it. Like, mental fortitude is great. It's good to do some research and know your own body and stuff. It's not for everybody, but I think even just starting, like, skipping breakfast is a fast. Breakfast, literally breakfast is really break fast. So it's the first meal that breaks that fast. So training yourself to be able to maintain your energy and focus without food is a good practice to have. And you can use it as a tool. Also got to make sure that you don't overuse it. People will have a lot of clients that'll be like, oh, I'm intermittent fasting every day and I'm running around drinking 7 cups of coffee. And they're not even like really present in their body, kind of they exist somewhere outside of there, and they come in, and it's it's not always a good thing, because when you are fasting, it does raise cortisol, which is stress hormone, and cortisol is catabolic, so it's acidic in nature, and it will break down muscle tissue and spike insulin, blood sugar. So when you are fasting, it is really about a mindset and maintaining a chill mindset, so that when you have those little urges of food or little blood sugar drops or something, that you don't go into a panic and think something's wrong and whatever, because that can start to be counterproductive. So yeah, fasting is a great tool, but you got to get protein right first, right? So when you are skipping a meal or you're fasting, that means you got to add extra protein on for the other 2 meals or 1 meal. It depends how you're doing that. So some of the options could be either just staying with this template, doing high protein fat, protein, green, simple carbs, and then some protein and some starchy carbs in the evening. Or you can start to tweak it a little bit and say, okay, you're going to do something like this template on the training days, and then do a fast on the flexibility days, because there's not as much of a demand. Cardio or metabolic stuff, strongman work, that will also not be as much of a taxation on the system. So you won't require as much protein on those days. So those are good days to also fast. So being able to sort of figure out what your template is. I wouldn't judge where your body is based on the first week either. Like, give it a couple weeks to settle into the program, and sort of get a new rhythm, let your body adapt. You're going to have an increase in hunger anyway. So it's good to stabilize your protein goal first, and then start to tweak, fasting, intermittent fasting, cutting carbs, that kind of thing. Because you don't want to have 4 different changes happening. You got training going on, range work is good. And then maybe changing the diet. It depends. Adding fasting, that's too many things for the body to think about. So I would just maybe change 1 thing per week. Start off with the template, change something the next week if you're feeling like you want to tweak something, and then move forward with that approach.
And then we just have these other 2 considerations for muscle building and dropping fat, if those were the differences.
Yeah, if the main goal is to pack on muscle, protein has got to be huge. Like, that's 1 gram per pound of body weight is it's not going to be enough if you really want to pack it on. You need to be looking at 2.5 grams if you really want to pack on muscle. If that is going to be a hardcore focus, is like, I'm here to put on whatever, 5 kilos or 10 pounds of muscle in 3 months or something, which is realistic only if you're having enough protein. You got tons of protein. And depending on how lean you are, adding more carbs. If you're really lean, you'll probably need a ton of carbs too. If you're not that lean, you can get away with a little bit. The dropping body fat one would be, you can't have too many goals at the same time. We are talking about body composition. So if you have a higher body fat percentage, I would lean more towards dropping body fat first, and that'll reflect in healthier hormones. So it's easier to put on muscle afterwards. So if it's a 3-month program, maybe for the first month or first 2 months, your goal is to drop body fat. So work on fasting, work on dropping carbs, get into a really good body composition, and then start packing on a lot of protein on that 3rd month. You're not going to make these changes in like 1 or 2 days. So I would look at it as like, if you got a really good goal, like for me, I do want to drop a few percentage of body fat. So I'm going to focus more on fasting for at least the first month and see where I'm at, keep my protein high. And then if I get down to about 10%-ish, then I'm going to be careful with how I add carbs, but I'm going to start to slowly add carbs and see how I am throughout that week. It's so easy just to like want to smash the carbs, and you got to be really careful with that because that can be too much. Obviously reach out to me if you have any questions around that stuff, because that can be partly individualized, but there's just certain signs and symptoms to watch out for as you're tweaking these things.
Cool.
Yeah.